The air in my childhood home always had a specific weight to it after Mum married Frank. It wasn't heavy with anger or loud with fighting, it was just thin. Like all the oxygen had been slowly siphoned out over the years and replaced with a polite, sterile silence. I was 17, and my name is Chloe. My mum, Susan, was a portrait of quiet endurance, her smiles a little too quick, her eyes a little too bright, as if she were constantly convincing herself, and us, that everything was just fine. Frank wasn't a bad man. That was the confusing part. He wasn't a cruel stepfather from a fairy tale. He didn't drink. He didn't yell. He held a stable job as an accountant. He was just a ghost in his own home. He moved through the rooms with a quiet detachment, his presence marked only by the soft click of his office door closing or the faint glow of his desk lamp under the crack at night. Our interactions were a script we'd all memorized. How was school, Chloe? Fine, thanks, Frank. Dinner was great, Susan. Thank you, dear. The change, when it began, was so gradual it was almost imperceptible. It started at the dinner table. Frank, who had always had a healthy appetite, began taking smaller portions. Mum would pile his plate high with her famous garlic mashed potatoes or hearty beef stew, and he'd smile that thin, distant smile and say, "That's plenty, Susan." "Thank you." At first, Mum took it personally. "Do you not like my cooking anymore, Frank?" she'd ask, her voice tinged with a vulnerability that made my chest ache. "It's wonderful, dear," he'd assure her, taking a deliberate bite. "Just not as hungry as I used to be. Getting older, I suppose." But it was more than that. Over the next few months, not as hungry transformed into something that looked a lot like avoidance. He'd push food around his plate, hiding peas under a piece of chicken bone. He started claiming he'd had a big lunch at work, that his stomach was feeling a bit off, that he'd just grab something later. The robust man I'd known, the one with a firm handshake and solid shoulders, began to shrink. His suits, always impeccable tailored, started to hang on him. The collar of his dress shirt gaped, revealing the sharp, bird-like line of his collarbone. His cheeks hollowed out, and his eyes, always a bit sad, now seemed too large for his face. Mum was frantic with worry. She dragged him to doctors, general practitioners, gastroenterologists, endocrinologists. They ran batteries of tests, blood panels, allergy screenings, scans for Crohn's, for celiac, for cancer. The results always came back the same. "There's nothing medically wrong with him, Mrs. Miller," one doctor told us, his tone a mix of professional courtesy and faint exasperation. "His metabolism is a little slow, but everything is within normal ranges. He's perfectly healthy." Healthy? I remember whispering to Mum in the parking lot after one such appointment. "He looks like a strong wind could carry him away." She just shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what to do, Chloe. I just don't know." The atmosphere in the house grew thicker, charged with a silent, desperate anxiety. We were watching him starve, and the medical world was telling us he was fine. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare where the rules of reality no longer applied. Frank, for his part, remained placidly detached. He'd assure Mum he was fine, that he was eating enough, that she shouldn't worry. But the evidence was there in the sharp angles of his body, in the way he had to tighten his belt to the last notch. The breaking point for me came on a Tuesday night. Mum had made his favorite meal, meatloaf with a ketchup glaze, the way his own mother used to make it. The smell filled the house, a warm, comforting, quintessentially American aroma that usually brought a flicker of genuine pleasure to his eyes. That night, he sat down, looked at the slice on his plate, and went pale. A fine sheen of sweat broke out on his forehead. I can't, Susan," he said, his voice a strained whisper. He pushed his chair back, its legs scraping against the hardwood floor like a scream in the quiet room. "I'm sorry, I just can't." He retreated to his office, leaving Mum and me staring at his full plate, the uneaten food a stark, terrifying monument to whatever was happening to him. Mum dissolved into quiet sobs, her shoulders shaking. I felt a hot, protective anger boil up inside me. This wasn't fine. This wasn't normal. And I was done being a passive spectator. The next day, I skipped my after-school club and came straight home. Frank wasn't back from work yet. I went straight to his office. This was his sanctum, a place I'd rarely entered. It was neat, obsessively so. A large mahogany desk, a high-backed leather chair, bookshelves filled with thick accounting manuals and historical biographies. It smelled of old paper and lemon polish. I didn't know what I was looking for. A bottle of pills, a secret diagnosis from a doctor he hadn't told us about. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pulled open desk drawers. They were filled with the usual paraphernalia, pens, paper clips, staplers, neatly labeled files. I was about to give up, feeling guilty and foolish, when my eyes fell on the bottom drawer on the right-hand side. It was locked. That was odd. Nothing else in the house was locked. My curiosity, now a burning compulsion, overrode my guilt. I looked around for a key. It wasn't in the other drawers. I checked under the desk, ran my fingers along the underside. My fingertips brushed against a small, metallic strip of tape. Taped to the underside of the desk drawer was a single, small, silver key. My hands were trembling as I fitted it into the lock. It turned with a soft, definitive click. I took a deep breath and pulled the drawer open. Inside, there were no pills, no medical files. There was only a small, faded, navy blue journal with a simple elastic band holding it closed. It looked old. Next to it was a framed photograph, face down. I picked up the photo first, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I turned it over. It was a picture of a young Frank, maybe in his early 20s. He looked so different. His face was full, his eyes bright and alive, crinkled at the corners from a genuine, ear-to-ear grin. His arm was wrapped around a young woman with long, sun-streaked brown hair and a laugh that seemed to leap out of the photograph. She was beautiful, her head tilted back, one hand resting on his chest. They were on a beach, the sunset painting the sky behind them in hues of orange and purple. They looked incandescently happy. I'd never seen Frank look like that, not even close. With a sense of dread and fascination, I picked up the journal. The elastic band was brittle. I slipped it off and opened the cover. The pages were filled with Frank's neat, precise handwriting, the same hand that filled out tax forms and balanced ledgers. But the words were anything but clinical. June 14th. The first entry began. Her name is Eleanor. The journal was a love story. It was the chronicle of Frank and Eleanor, their meeting in college, their first date, their dreams of traveling the world, of buying her old house and fixing it up, of having a big family. It was filled with tiny, intimate details, the way she always tucked her hair behind her left ear, the song they danced to at a dive bar, the smell of her perfume, a scent called Sunshine that had been discontinued years ago. He wrote about their engagement, the simple gold band he'd saved for months to buy. He wrote about the life they were going to build, a life that sounded so full of light and noise and love, the absolute antithesis of the silent, thin-aired existence he shared with us. And then, the entries changed. October 3rd. The headaches started. The doctors are running tests. Eleanor is trying to be brave, but I see the fear in her eyes. I have to be strong for her. November 18th. It's a glioblastoma. They are saying it's inoperable. The word feels like a physical blow. I threw up in the hospital bathroom. How can this be happening? The entries that followed were a brutal, heart-wrenching descent. Page after page documented the slow, cruel unraveling of the vibrant woman in the photograph. The radiation, the chemotherapy, the loss of her hair, her mobility, her spark. Frank wrote about holding her hand as she slept, memorizing the feel of her skin, the sound of her breathing. He wrote about the promises he made to her in the dark, silent hours of the night. March 22nd. She made me promise tonight. She was so weak, her voice just a whisper. She made me promise I would live, really live. She said, Frank, don't you dare just exist. You have to live for both of us. Promise me you'll find happiness again. Promise me you'll eat at that little Italian place in Rome we always talked about. Promise me you'll learn to sail. Promise me you'll fall in love again. I promised. I promised her everything. Through tears I couldn't stop. How could I deny her anything? May 11th. Eleanor is gone. The world has lost all its color. The silence is absolute. I don't know how to breathe in a world she isn't in. The last entry was dated just a few weeks before he met my mother. I met a woman today, Susan. She's kind. She has a young daughter, Chloe. They are good people. They deserve a whole man. And I am a ghost. I made promises to Eleanor that I cannot keep. The thought of living that life, our life, with someone else, it feels like a betrayal. It feels like I'm erasing her. But I promised her I would live. And Susan and Chloe, they are alive. A different one, a quieter one, but alive nonetheless. How do I keep my promise without shattering my own heart? I closed the journal, my vision blurred with tears. The pieces snapped together with a devastating, painful clarity. Frank wasn't starving himself because of a physical illness. He was starving himself because of a broken promise. Every meal my mum made, every attempt to build a new life, was a reminder of the life he'd lost. The meatloaf wasn't just meatloaf, it was a symbol of a future he'd planned with Eleanor. To enjoy it, to partake in this new family's sustenance, felt to him like a betrayal of his vow to her, of the memory of the life they were supposed to have. He was literally withering away from the guilt of trying to move on. The doctors were right. There was nothing physically wrong with him. The problem was a wound on his soul that had never healed. I sat on the floor of his office for a long time, the journal in my lap, sobbing for the man I'd never known, for the tragedy I'd been too young and self-absorbed to see. My anger toward him evaporated, replaced by a profound, aching pity. He wasn't a detached, cold stepfather. He was a grieving widower, trapped in a prison of his own love and loss. I heard the front door open and close. Frank was home. Panic flared in me. I quickly wiped my tears, placed the journal and the photograph back in the drawer exactly as I'd found them, locked it, and replaced the key. I slipped out of his office and into my room just as I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't tell my mum. The truth was too private, too sacred to Frank. To reveal it would be another violation. But I couldn't do nothing. I had to find a way to help him keep his promise to Eleanor, without destroying my mother in the process. That night at dinner, I watched him with new eyes. I saw the effort it took for him to sit at the table. I saw the way he looked at the food, not with disgust, but with a deep, profound sorrow. I saw the ghost of the young, happy man from the photograph in the weary set of his shoulders. "Frank," I said, my voice sounding strange and loud in the quiet room. Both he and my mum looked at me, surprised. I rarely initiated conversation. "I have a project for my history class. We have to interview someone about their life before we were born. About the 1990s. What it was like. Would you mind talking to me about it sometime?" Frank looked startled. He blinked, his fork hovering over his plate. "The 90s?" he repeated. I suppose I could, Chloe, if you think it would help." My mom's face lit up with a fragile hope. "That's a wonderful idea, honey. Frank has some great stories, I'm sure." It was a start. A few days later, I sat with him in the living room, my school notebook in my lap, a voice recorder app open on my phone. At first, his answers were short, clipped. He talked about the music, the cars, the political climate. It was safe, surface-level stuff. Then, I took a gamble. "What was your favorite place to go? For a date or something?" A shadow passed over his face. He was silent for a long moment. I thought I'd pushed too far. "There was a diner," he said softly, his gaze turning inward. "Mike's Diner, off of Elm Street. It's a parking lot now. They had the best cherry pie. We'd go there after a movie, share a slice." His voice trailed off. He didn't say we who, but I knew. "Cherry pie," I repeated, writing it down. "That sounds good." The next day, I went to 3 different bakeries until I found a slice of homemade cherry pie. I brought it home and, after dinner, placed it on the table in front of him. "I got this for my project," I lied, "to get a real taste of the era. Want to try it? See if it's authentic?" He looked from the pie to me, his expression unreadable. My mum held her breath. Slowly, he picked up a fork. He took a small bite. He chewed, slowly, his eyes closed. A single tear traced a path down his gaunt cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "It's close," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "It's very close." He took another bite, and another. He ate the entire slice. It wasn't a miracle cure. He didn't suddenly gain 20 pounds. But it was a crack in the dam. After that, I found other ways in. I discovered he and Eleanor had loved old jazz. I started playing a Chet Baker station softly in the house. I found out they'd wanted to visit Maine. I left a library book about the coast of Maine on the coffee table. I was careful, subtle, weaving threads of Eleanor's memory into the fabric of our daily life, not as a threat, but as an honored guest. I began talking to him more, not as a stepdaughter to a stepfather, but as one human being to another. I told him about my own struggles, my fears about college, my heartbreaks. I created a space where it was safe to have feelings, where the silence wasn't a requirement. One Saturday afternoon, I found him standing by the living room window, looking out at the rain. I came and stood beside him. "It's okay, I said quietly, my heart pounding. "To miss her, to talk about her. Mum and we're not trying to replace her. We want you to be here with us. All of you." He didn't look at me for a long time. The only sound was the gentle patter of rain against the glass. "Her name was Eleanor," he said, the name a sacred word on his lips. "She loved the rain." "Tell me about her," I said. And he did. He talked for over an hour. He told me about her ridiculous love, her terrible sense of direction, her passion for bad 80s action movies. He cried. I cried with him. For the first time, the grief wasn't a locked-away secret in a drawer. It was out in the open, shared, and in being shared, it began to lose its power to destroy him. The change was slow, painstaking, but it was real. He started eating more, not huge meals, but consistent ones. He began to engage with my mum, asking about her day, really listening to her answers. He even started laughing at her jokes, a real, genuine laugh that reached his eyes. The ghost was slowly coming back to life. One evening, about 6 months after I found the journal, we were all in the kitchen. Mum was making spaghetti, and Frank was setting the table. He turned to her and said, "Susan, this smells incredible. Just like that little place in Little Italy we went to on our honeymoon." My mum froze, a ladle in her hand. She looked at him, and I saw a light in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. It was the light of being truly seen, of being part of a shared memory, a shared future. Later that night, after Mum had gone to bed, Frank found me reading on the sofa. He sat down beside me. "Chloe," he began, his voice low and earnest. "I know what you did. The pie, the music, the book about Maine." He looked at me, his eyes clear and direct. "Thank you." I just nodded, a lump in my throat. "You gave me a gift I can never repay," he continued. "You helped me understand that keeping my promise to Eleanor didn't mean clinging to the past until I faded away. It meant honoring her by finally being brave enough to live in the present. You and your mother, you are my present. And it's a good one." He reached out and squeezed my hand. It was the first truly fatherly gesture he'd ever offered me. Frank didn't just start eating again that year. He started living. He took my mum on that trip to Maine. He signed up for sailing lessons at the local community center. He gained back the weight. His laughter became a familiar sound in our house, and the sterile silence was replaced with the warm, messy, beautiful noise of a family. What happened next didn't just shock me, it transformed me. I learned that the most profound mysteries are often not in the physical world, but in the human heart. I learned that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to help someone else keep a promise, even if it means sharing them with a ghost. And I learned that a family isn't just defined by blood or by a perfect, untroubled history, but by the willingness to walk into the dark places together, and help each other find the way back into the light. My stepfather was starving, but it was a hunger no doctor could diagnose, a hunger born of a love so strong it was killing him. And the cure wasn't found in a medicine bottle, but in a faded blue journal, a slice of cherry pie, and the courage to finally, after all those years, speak her name.